Wolfram, I believe that you are in what, 2033 in Kuwait, is this correct?
Could be, but I started back in LA where you're at. I graduated from Hollywood High in 1976.
Wow, wow, nice. So 1973, which is where I am, I should find you running around on the streets as like a sophomore.
I was running around in the Hollywood Hills like a
Wow.
wild kid in the hills.
And you were a hippie.
I was a hippie
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
And you're still a hippie.
I'm still a hippie. I don't have the long hair down to my waist. I still have my hippie beads right here, my love beads. So yeah, I'm still a bona fide hippie.
Awesome. Well,
For me, that just means that I come from love and it's all about the system, man, and that kind of stuff.
except now, I mean, what we're talking about today, it's about love in the system. How to
Yeah.
have structural love, how to be in the system, how to understand that the system is love. Ooh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, at least that's my interpretation of structural love. So,
Well,
I
I'm looking forward to teasing that out with you.
yeah, we're gonna get down into that. But first, I want to say, like, one thing that I know is going on for you. So you and I, we co-founded Tilt, the Institute for Love and Time, and this is why I'm like very friendly with you, but also love you, and also I'm so grateful to you because I how did that happen? I was on. How did it happen that we met?
Well, I was looking for you before I met you. I was looking for somebody who would take the idea seriously of founding an institute for about love. And I ran into a friend of ours, Cassandra.
Oh,
Via
Cassie Beaton.
Yeah, yes, at a holiday event at Dr. Alyssa Epples' house.
Right.
And I went to Dr. Alyssa Epples' house and I told her I had the intention of I was wanted to talk to somebody who was really serious about love and looking at it with some rigor and some depth. And she said, "Oh, talk to Cassie. She'll know." I went to Cassie and I barely finished a sentence and she said, "You need to talk to Julia Mossbridge." And boom. And so we got connected.
And
But
then we had
it
lunch and
was
I
very
started.
direct intention to find you.
It was really wild because I had been dreaming about starting an institute related to love and time because I think a lot about time travel, and then I started realizing that people who start to change the way they think about time start feeling this unconditional love, like it's a byproduct, even, I mean, it's a wonderful byproduct, but it feels like a byproduct of changing the way you think about time. And so then I'm like, oh, there has to be this institute about love and time. And we had lunch, and you're like, "Oh, I have this story about a woman who develops this institute of unconditional love and time travel." And I was like, "Wow." Uh,
So one of my crazy diagrams.
yes, you drew on the page on the like menu of the restaurant. Yeah, it was fantastic. Okay, right. So that's how it all went down. And I often forget the beginnings of things. It feels like they were always in place.
We had this wonderful founding retreat. And having a couple of degrees in organization development, I came prepared with my pads of paper. And, I've been part of founding other nonprofits. And, I had all these sort of structured ideas about how to start an organization. And I was basically, you asked me to kind of leave that at the door. And it was a very unusual and wonderful process to give birth to Tilt. And so
Yeah.
that was a really just wonderful experience and very unique in the organizational world, to have that
Yeah,
kind
we
of
were yeah, we
experience.
were able to get to a mission and a vision because of the people in the room really quickly. And that was the beginning of our structural, that was the building in of the structural love. Yeah. Well, so you're working right now on a book that I guess I just really want to make sure we tell people about. It's called Radiate Perpetual Love, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you're not happy with the website, but we're gonna put the website in the chat so people, you
Yeah.
know what it is. I think it's radiateperpetuallove.com. Is that right?
Radiate Perpetual dot love.
Dot love. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
And then
people,
I'll also share in the Facebook link a page that has a lot of the prints that are going into the book because those are there's a lot of prints that are going to be with the book.
Yeah, so it's art and words that inspire perpetual love, right? Inspire radiating perpetual love. Is that
108 revelations and reflections, which I combine together. I call them radiances. So 108 radiances that are revelations, which are simply quotes about conditional love from across the ages. And then the reflections, my own from 4 decades of work in social change and doing organizational work. And then the images, the illustrations to go along with that. And there's 4 quadrants in the book that radiate out from, first of all, just being present with love, not having to accept it or do anything with it. Just, if you're familiar with mindful meditation, just being present with this idea of unconditional love. Then the second quadrant, the second quarter of the book, is applying unconditional love to yourself. The third, applying unconditional love to others. And the fourth is this systemic love or structural love, which is applied at the social scale, such as what Martin Luther King has done and many others like him, to really apply love to scale it
so?
on a social and systemic scale.
Okay, so what I love about those 4 quadrants is essentially in the center is unconditional love. You're centering unconditional love without you're not choosing a particular religion. You're saying that unconditional love is there for everybody, can be accessed, you could be present with it in the sense that you can access it. It is healing for everybody. So there's no one who is an exception to that. If right. I mean, I'm sort of putting words in your mouth, but I'm also, because you and I are pretty simpatico on this, I'm translating it. But you're also
Yes,
saying that there's work to do with becoming conscious of that you can connect with it, you can access it, it can come into your life, it can come into your organizations, it can come into the whole world. Um,
but the
correct?
first step is just being present with it without having to think about actions and intentions and all that. It's just simply allowing yourself to sit with the subject long enough. And that's where I started. My process was just collecting information, just sitting, mulling in that information, and then starting to see some patterns and thinking about then, of course, how do I apply that to myself? But one other big piece of this, which I think is important when you look at unconditional love, let's say objectively, is is it something that's exclusive to human beings? Or does unconditional love, is it universal? Is it coming in through the stardust that we're comprised of? Is it in the ether? Is it in, the dark matter? Is it, making the whole universe go around? Where I think we humans tend to think, well, love is something that we created. It's a construct.
It's an
Except,
emotion. People think it's an emotion, which
yes,
it is. You may have an emotional response to it, like you have an emotional response to seeing the sunrise, but the
yes,
sunrise is not an emotion. It
that's
is
right.
very motivational. It can have all sorts of impacts on you depending on what your emotional state is, but it's a natural phenomenon. And I agree here that there's a mistake that people think because they have a strong emotional response when they experience unconditional love, that it itself is an emotion.
Yes,
And they don't realize, I think often people ask me like, well, why are you so worried about emotions? I'm like, actually not so worried about the emotion you have when you access unconditional love. I'm actually not worried about it all, but I'm hoping people learn to access unconditional love like they access the sun or they access electricity, or that, you know what I mean? It's this natural
exactly.
force in the universe. I think we both feel that, but I think we should define unconditional love for the analytic listeners who
Yeah.
might not know what we're talking about.
Well, that's a great place to start. I mean, I think Tilt provides a definition of love, being the absence of fear, and unconditional love, obviously, loving without having to have conditions. Like, is it a transaction?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, love can be transactional, I suppose, but
but not
um,
unconditional love.
not unconditional love. And so I think that's one place to start. And the other place maybe is, looking at at unconditional love at a social scale. it seems to be, from my perspective, the one thing that we can apply in social situations in history that have seemed insurmountable. Like when you have generations of war or strife between certain groups, how do you get over that? You know, and you look at, for example, Nelson Mandela in prison for, you know, decades of his life. How do you get over that? You know, I don't know of any other force like unconditional love that can help us transcend the awful misery and suffering and structural hate and all these things that are swirling around us in our, you know, human history, and of course today more than ever. And so how do we get beyond that? And I don't know of any force. I think Martin Luther King turned to, you know, started off with racial inequality, and he saw unconditional love and nonviolence as the pathway forward. Thich Nhat Hanh saw that. Nelson Mandela saw that, and others. It just seems to be the one force that is able to transcend the you know, the wheel of suffering, you know, the samsara, which is, you know, which has gone back for, you know, as long as humans have been around, I guess.
You know, I'm just reminded of, I have many thoughts, but I was just reminded of Robert Kennedy, who also expressed that. And this year, this is a time thing, but this year, 2024, rhymes with 1968 in the sense that it's also leap year and all of the days fall on the same weekday as in, so if you look at a calendar of 1968, and look at today, it'll fall on the same day. It's exactly the same. And so I was thinking of Robert Kennedy, and he felt that way too. There's so many people. I mean, and in recent times, people are becoming more aware of the healing power of love, and that's partly because of Tilt and partly because of other organizations, like Templeton and Fetzer, and I feel like there's a missing part of this definition, which is love itself. I believe is not only does it produce the absence of fear, because that's an emotional description. I think it's the name for that which connects. Like, you know, it's interesting that we talk about bridges, we talk about interfaces, but do we really name that which connects? You know, in English, like I'm certainly other cultures do, and certainly indigenous cultures do, but in English, I think that's what we mean by love. It's this force in the universe that connects.
Yes.
Um, and physicists study that all the time, right? What is the relationship?
And in indigenous cultures, you know, you look at the Lakota Sioux, they've had this idea of the long body, you know, going back to love and time. What force in your culture allows you to get out of this horrible quarterly cycles that we've gotten into? And think in the 300-year plan, in the multi-generational plan, and where your thinking includes your ancestors and all of your children and all the one-leggeds and the two-leggeds, you know, all of the living things. What force enables you to broaden you know, this transcendental force to broaden your thinking? And I think that's a fundamental part of it. And I think, you know, part of perhaps why Tilt has put forward this time machine app. You know, it really, unconditional love seems to go hand in hand with being able to transcend, or perhaps be in the moment enough so that you can release yourself from this moment in time, and then be able to look back and look forward, and perhaps see some solutions that right now, if you look around, it may seem like, how are we going to get out of this mess?
Right. It's funny because people talk about being present, and therefore you can't, like, any moment that you're looking towards the future or looking towards the past, you're not being present. Actually, when you're very, very present in your body and in the now, you're including, and you have unconditional love. Unconditional love is the ingredient that connects you through time. So you include your past self, you include your future self, and you're like this beautiful, I like to think of it as like a necklace that goes through time with these beads that are experiences, but you become the string or the necklace. And um that feels like a really good definition of unconditional love in action doing its transcendent work. And actually Abraham Maslow, the people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Yeah,
And so just before he died, he had this
that's right.
revelation that
Yes.
self-actualization is not the top of the pyramid. It is self-transcendence. In other words, people have a need for self-transcendence. And organizations like the US military and other militaries have, and religions and various powerful organizations that change people's minds and cause revolutions, and have a lot of power, have it because they're using self-transcendence. I'm not saying in a positive way self-transcendence and love and unconditional love are not equal, because self-transcendence can be negative, like I'm gonna transcend myself and put all my effort towards this horrible, you know, towards being a Nazi or whatever it is, right? Something that's really negative, that can happen too. So it can be used to lift people up through the pyramid. But if you're going to have an experience of self-transcendence, it's really good to be aware that this is a powerful force and it's even a human need. And ask the question, is this unconditionally loving self-transcendence that's pulling me up through this and making me feel like this is bigger than myself and this is going towards love, and I don't feel fear. Um I feel fine. Like I feel like I am loved and I can love other people and I can be who I am without retribution. If that's the case, then that is a real self-transcendent force that is on the positive side. And I
Yes.
think it's important to think about how that can be used to manipulate people. Someone was just talking today, and I was talking about unconditional love and structural love, and he was saying, you know, there, if you don't acknowledge that there are serpents all around us, um, you will fail. You'll be manipulated. And I said, well, but you also can't become a serpent in order to deal with the fact that there are serpents all around you, right? Like that is not winning.
Yeah.
And if we want to talk about winning, what winning is in a sort of a universal sense is having the experience of unconditional love as much as you can in your life. Like that is sort of the metaphysical winning. That is, and it makes you essentially invulnerable, because I don't mean you don't have vulnerable feelings or experiences. What I mean is those don't feel like weakness to you because they're part of being human and you're feeling unconditionally loved in exactly who you are. And you're loving other people and other animals and the world exactly as they are. So it doesn't feel like weakness and it doesn't feel like you're under threat. So I also feel like these examples that we give of people who died, you know, suffered and died for their belief in love, the reason we give those examples is to point out, I mean, sort of unconsciously, like I wasn't conscious of this, but I think the reason we give those examples is because it points out, like, you don't win life by staying alive. Everyone dies.
No
I'm
one
not,
gets out alive.
no one gets out alive. It's not like to not die is the, I mean, of course we all don't want to die. I mean, if we are healthy and don't feel suicidally depressed, we want to live. And there's something more. There's this thing that exists in the universe that a human soul connects with, and it uses unconditional love to connect with it. And that is powerful, and I think someday will be scientifically shown. Um,
Yes.
you know,
That's my deepest hope is that, and I think, if Maslow lived longer, he might have continued the work on the pyramid. So point to the point you made that self-transcendence, yes, but transcending what to what? And the bottom of the pyramid starts with, there's love down there at the bottom, but maybe there's also love, at the top.
yeah,
And you can see that in many ancient symbols, this idea of in my art, you'll see the pervasive image of the eye in the heart. And that's a very old image to see, basically to see through the heart. But I think this connection between unconditional love and some of the deep structural problems in our society is really important, because I believe that part of my hypothesis of Radiate Perpetual Love is that yes, more of us need to radiate perpetual love to share this intention and to share this work. But we also need to build more structure into our society, and very intentional structure. And this is the kind of thing that Martin Luther King did. He started off with racial inequality, but he naturally gravitated to economic inequality, the war system, and he specifically talked to his own church about structural love, changing the nature of the church itself and changing the structure of society and the war machine. And it's no coincidence, I don't think, that he was assassinated at the time he was, because he was converging those very systemic and powerful ideas into his work. And now he's a triple threat. Now it's not just he's dealing with race, he's dealing with economics, he's dealing with the war system. And so,
He's
this is
dealing
not a,
with,
go ahead.
oh, I just said he's dealing with everything.
Yeah.
It's like
And,
when you start to question the actual structure, then you're in trouble, right?
you're in trouble, or you're both you're enlightened, and I think it's a beautiful place to be, but I think you also have to be very aware that you're not necessarily going to get the Nobel Prize, or if you're looking for some sort of personal reward in this, you could get nailed on the cross, you could get shot on the head or whatever. But I don't think to the people that this has happened to, that this is that mattered in the big picture of things, that it becomes a responsibility. And this responsibility can be structural too, so that the Germans have this idea of Herzensbildung, which I
Yeah,
love, which is the education of the heart.
yeah.
And the Bildung is, you could translate it into English as education, but it really is about the responsibility of us to evolve together as this is your civic social responsibility to allow to evolve. So it's not just a matter of educating yourself and acquiring skills and knowledge, but to be a better person so we can make a better society. And there's a professor in Germany at the Max Planck Institute who wants to build the teachings of love into every child's education. Every single child in Germany would need to take at least one course. Because right now, where do you learn love? It sort of just happens. Like and people might even jest about, why are structural love? Why do you even want to put some structure around that? I learned about that in whatever, from my mother or from my girlfriend or my wife or boyfriend, whatever wherever we think we learn love from, it happens sort of randomly. And maybe and I've worked with abused children, of course. On the flip side of that, we have over 100,000 children in foster care in the US. There's a lot of unloved children, so it can go either way. But the point is, there's systems in our society which I refer to something I call the love deficit, because I've worked in hunger, senior health, refugees, people with disabilities, abused children, homelessness. And at the root of every single one of those social problems is a structural cause. You can address the homeless person by giving them a home, and we should, but we don't necessarily solve homelessness when we do that. We have to go deeper, and that's the kind of thing I think Martin Luther King was trying to do. And if I think people get scared in these moments in history when some of our beloved leaders in this kind of work are taken out. And I think part of the reason that happens is it hadn't reached a systems point yet. He was talking about building it into a systemic movement. And I think much that has carried forward. I still have, and there's many threads in our society which I think have built on that. But we need to, I believe we need to strengthen these kinds of structures and movements.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, I think, here we are 50 years later, more. What is the world doing? Okay, I know you and we love to go deep on the
off the deep
philosophical.
end.
Yeah, into the water and then just like play around for 6 hours. But how can we get practical? Like, how can we really tell people what we're talking about with structural love, what that really means, and what are some steps people can take to, in their organizations, in their communities, in their family, like to weave structural love in? I mean, we both know people who work in government, academia, industry, startups, libraries, who are homeless, who I mean, everyone can have an impact wherever you are, right?
Yes.
So what are some practical, what do we mean by structural love? And what are some, and I sort of, okay, I'm going to try my hand at a definition of what we mean by structural love, and then let's go back and forth, and then let's talk about practical ways. So what I think we mean is recognizing that love itself is a building material.
Yes.
So you can, unconditional love, that is, or universal love, not conditional love. I think that's a bad building material. It feels good, but it doesn't work because if the conditions are broken, everything falls apart. Unconditional love is this building material that is very strong because it's about this connection. And when you're building something, like when we were building Tilt, but whenever anyone at Tilt goes out into the world and builds, we have people at Tilt who are now at United Airlines and who are at Halliburton and who are at various like robotics companies. People who go out and sort of move in the world that's outside of our idealistic nonprofit, they carry this with them. And so then somehow when they build connections, they are offering this arm or this connection that is made of that unconditional love, and that builds stronger connections. And so it feels to me like that offer starts to crystallize a portion, if you've ever seen crystals form, starts to crystallize a portion of the organization, which spreads. When people feel love, it spreads, right? Um,
Yes.
for example, one of our, Polly Washburn, one of our wonderful Tilt founding project managers and coders, is now spreading love through Halliburton, right? And um, and people are noticing, and people are saying like, why does your team do so well? Well, love, right? And I was talking with some students from Kellogg uh graduate school, business graduate school at Northwestern on Friday, and I was talking with them about structural love, and I was saying they really like were thirsty for it. And they were saying, but what are they kept asking me, well, okay, this is amazing, and this, we do feel intuitively that this is correct. And what do those big, like, Fortune 100 companies think of this? And I'm like, it doesn't matter, because by the time they notice that they're being overtaken by unconditional love, they'll love it because whatever it is, it's helping them, right? It's helping them do better in the world. It's helping them
Yeah.
do better things in the world. Anyway, that's my riff on what structural love is.
Yeah. And just in case people think we're talking about pie in the sky, Jack Ma, who, runs one of the largest companies in the world, went,
Wait,
had
which company does he run? These are the things that that I'm always like, what?
a Chinese company that is sort of like the
Like
Amazon.
Alibaba?
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Um, Yeah, and so he runs one of the largest companies in the world, and he's at the World Economic Forum meeting, and he starts talking in the middle of a long speech about economics, blah blah blah. He goes on a long discussion about the love quotient and how he applies it in his company. He talks about how IQ is important, EQ is important. He has maybe half of his employees are women, which is a pretty good statistic for a global corporation. Unfortunately, many global corporations are still behind on the gender gap. But he said the LQ, the love quotient, is extremely important. And so he actually introduced that in the middle of the business world at one of the the global World Economic Forum meetings. And we have talked about in Tilt, we've had conversations about love is of the essence, and taking the idea of time is of the essence, which is kind of a standard legal construct, and flipping that to love is of the essence. In other words, if there's no love here, the contract is null and void,
Yeah.
and to build that clause into our corporate structures. And it's really interesting when you start talking about nonprofits versus for-profits. They're all corporations. They're corps. We're creating a legal body.
Yeah.
And one thing that
Yeah.
I found, because I've studied organization for so many years, is that it's ironic that we build organizations, but we don't consciously, if we're building a corp, which is essentially, it's a legal body,
Right.
where's the heart?
Right.
where is love in that corporation? And
Right.
my opinion is, if you don't have a heart, if you don't build the love into the corp, what you have is a corpse.
Yeah.
You know, it,
Yes.
it's just a dead body. It
Yeah.
has no heart and
Yeah.
no soul. And even nonprofits, which are almost by default coming from love, often may feel uncomfortable about using the love word in the boardroom or
Oh,
in the organizational structure. And so I think we need to take this idea seriously, that organizations require love to function properly. And when they don't have it, of course, they can become very toxic. Look at, I'm sorry to say, but Silicon Valley is become, a very toxic culture. And I think when you only focus on transactions and technology, et cetera, that's loveless.
yeah,
you
it
got
becomes, it's the problem is of the fear-based aspect of it. So this is the opposite of love isn't really hate, because when you hate someone, you're still forming a connection with them. There's still intimacy there. But the opposite of love is really fear. Like if you are afraid, that means that you're not feeling loved. Um, Sort of by definition, you're not feeling unconditional love. So if you find yourself afraid, even if someone's attacking you or whatever, I mean, at an extreme sort of love monk level, like the practice is, okay, someone's attacking me. Can I feel unconditional love for myself and them? Now, that doesn't predict your behavior. It doesn't predict, I will let them do whatever abuse they want to me. Not at all, right? Because remember, there's unconditional love for yourself and them. It's just acknowledgement that there's nothing better that they can do with the information they have right now in their life and the structure of their brain and the structure of their body. The best thing that they know how to do is to attack you. That's the best they know how to do, whether it's a verbal attack or a physical attack. It doesn't mean you instantly forgive them. You're going to protect yourself against them. You're going to love yourself and go through all the feelings of anger and rage and frustration about the attack. All of that is so within the confines of unconditional love for who you are. There's no conditions. But the unconditional love piece is this recognition. Nothing needs to change. Like this, I can remove myself from the situation. I can report this person to the police or whatever is appropriate. But there's that person is doing the best they can. And I think that's one of the, oh, we have a question here
Yeah.
that we should
It
answer, but
says,
I think that's one of the key sort of practical pieces of structural love in an organization, is to acknowledge there's no exception to people doing the best they can. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be fired. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be rehired. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be, a CEO shouldn't be dumped. I mean, what it means is that everyone's doing the best they can, so that judgment and fear go out the window, and love is way more functional and productive. So, okay, what is our question? How have we seen this concretely applied in the workplace? Does it relate to DEIB goals? Great question. So,
DIB being,
oh, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Here's
thank
our,
you.
I just have to riff a little bit about DEIB. I think this is a missed opportunity. I think it should be idea belonging. So inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and then belonging. One, because it doesn't sort of sound like die subconsciously. And two, idea belonging. How awesome. Belonging is what we want. We want to have this, everyone without exception wants the experience of belonging. Doesn't mean they want to be with people ever. Some people are very antisocial, but the experience of belonging somehow is a deep human need. And so my riff on that is just like, can we just call it idea belonging? And that still contains all the pieces. Okay, there's that. And then does it relate? Of course it does, because belonging is this experience of being unconditionally loved as you are. Right? I mean, so you certainly don't feel like you belong if people say, you can come to our party, but if you wear blue, you leave. Right? Because what if you wanted to wear blue? Then you don't belong as yourself. You belong as someone else that they think that you should be. So,
How many of us have been in the workplace, and let's say we're having a meeting, and there a debate about a subject comes up, and you see that sometimes people get trapped in the corner because they associate the concept or their belief with themselves. And so therefore, when you're attacking or criticizing this concept or belief, you're attacking me.
Yeah.
And I think this love quotient idea can be teased out considerably in organizations so that your self-worth and respect, it's always there. No one's going to take that away with you from you, but we may have some big questions about your business proposition, whatever it might be. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we're questioning you. And so I think we're just not necessarily always prepared for these situations in work where oftentimes it seems very transactional, and it's either, it's a win-lose situation.
Yeah.
One of my favorite films, and I think you too, is Arrival, because a key part of the thinking in the film is the win-win scenario, that there doesn't need to be a win-lose scenario. And it's a revelation, of course, when human beings, I won't give away the plot, but it's a revelation when human beings realize that, oh, what we have here is not a situation where we're being invaded by aliens who want to kill us and, take over our planet. They're asking us to think forward into the future. And the way you unlock that is by working together,
Yeah.
and it's not a win-win. It's not a win-lose. It's a win-win. This is the game. We can
Yeah.
all win.
Yes. It's a non-zero sum game.
Non-zero sum game.
Yeah.
And that's the love game,
Yeah.
because love is the ultimate non-zero sum game.
Unconditional love is, yeah.
Unconditional love. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But in terms of how has this been concretely applied in the workplace? Like one way is with the service leadership model for CEOs. So
Yes.
in this model, if someone is actually like the CEO of NVIDIA is like this. So he says to his folks, NVIDIA is like extremely productive and takes over the stock market, right? I mean, it's like, this is not a company where like, oh, you're impractical and you're just dreaming. But the CEO says to his people, look, I always have time for you. And he actually does. And he says, my job is to serve the mission, and that's your job also. You're not serving me. So he just deconstructs the hierarchy. You're not serving me. I'm doing what I can to help you serve the mission. And that has a phenomenal impact on people. That is the definition of self-transcendence. And then his capacity to serve them is the definition of love, right? And even unconditional love, because it's not like no one. So again, I just want to underscore, it's not like when you unconditionally love someone, like they could do no wrong and you can't say, oh, hey, this doesn't work for me or whatever. One way that this could be concretely applied in the workplace is, when it comes time, you realize that an employee, if you're a supervisor, you realize that an employee, it's just, you've mentioned several times, like, this needs to be improved, and I don't know what's going on, but it hasn't been improved, and it feels like you're not quite a match anymore for the company. Like, that you actually have a conversation with them like that, where it's, again, not about attacking them, but about saying, like, you're no longer a match, so thank you, and I'm really hoping that you can find something that feels more like a match for you. That's one way it could be concretely applied. Another way it could be concretely applied inside yourself if you're not in the higher level of the power structure, because all of these things are so leveled, unfortunately. If you're in feeling like you don't have much power, to notice when you feel afraid and to allow yourself to be loved in that moment. Just put your hand on your heart and just assume that there's this like sun or whatever waves, whatever air, whatever sort of natural force you like, wind of love, and just receive that before you do anything else, because you will start to make ripples in your work environment that, regardless of whether you stay or leave, right, that will make your life better and the people around you, their life will be better.
Well, I'm so happy you chose the NVIDIA example, because I actually worked with NVIDIA and their CEO in an event, a very special event in Silicon Valley. NVIDIA, long time ago, because there used to be a practice in Silicon Valley, you'd have these big annual Christmas parties, and they'd give away a car, and there's a big dinner and awards and all that. And they decided, no, that's just a big waste of money. Nobody likes that food. And why does one employee get the car, et cetera?
Yeah.
And they said, we're going to take all that money, which in Silicon Valley, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars easily for one
Easily millions. Yeah.
for one event, and
Yeah.
we're going to do a community event. We're going to take that money and spend it on a community project. So I was blessed to be executive director of Full Circle Farm. They pumped about $350,000 into building an outdoor living classroom, a giant living teepee, a packing shed, and they did all this in 2 days with 1,500 employees. And CEO Wang's flying overhead in a helicopter, waving out, and there's video cameras, and a whole bunch of people have no idea. I mean, there were certain, we had an organization helping with the construction, of course, but there were a lot of people that normally sit at a desk swinging a hammer and circular saws, etc., and just loving it because and they got so much more out of this experience
Oh,
than
yeah.
the Christmas party, and they do this every year
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
every year. And that, what impact do they have? And the whole company gets to see that they're walking the talk and really putting the money into love, into love for the community and engaging in the community. So it was a great example. And of course, we mentioned Jack Ma, and there's others in the corporate world who are getting this. Unconditional love can be a powerful corporate tool. And the ultimate currency is love. I mean, we've talked about currency, and that's another system right now which is in dire need of unconditional love. Right now, much of currency systems are built on debt and fear and transactional relationships. And I think there's definitely a future where we can build on the currency of love. And I think money can buy you love. And then that's my hypothesis.
All right, we got to
It,
talk about that because it's
yeah.
1973 where I am. Yeah,
Yes.
remember, and you're like 2033. So from 1973, that sounds pretty, I don't know, materialistic. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, let's get to the bottom of that.
Well, at the bottom of every system of monetary system, there's presumably some value behind the currency. The coin is rarely worth what it says on the coin. The $10 bill is just a piece of paper. It's worth whatever 15 cents.
Well, it's
What
what
is
whatever we agree it's worth.
exactly, it's whatever we agree it's worth. And now we're moving into digital currency, which is based on what? I mean, have these NFTs, a little handwritten cartoon image of a dog on a piece of paper, and it's sold for $1.5 million. So the point is, you can build currency, the value of monetary systems, on any values you choose. You can build it on debt systems and economic slavery. And by the way, we have more slaves on Earth today than we've ever had in human history. And economic slavery is a huge part of that horrible statistic. And so but there's been wonderful systems like benefit corporations and ways to embed social and cultural values, the whole ESG system and sustainability. And there's multiple other bottom lines that we're starting to build into financial systems. That's already happening. It's not like that's the future. That's here now. But I think we're still locked into monetary systems that are based on debt and sort of a deficit versus how, the pay it forward concept, where you have, for example, coffee shops, and you
Yeah.
go in and you leave $5 bill so that somebody who can't afford a cup of coffee, or a pizza parlor, there's many examples where this has really thrived. And you say, well, humans, some people might say, well, humans aren't all that generous. But actually, when you provide the opportunity for them to leave some value, pay something forward,
Yeah.
they often take it. So I think we're ripe for that kind of thing.
Okay, so this feeds into this idea that you dreamed up and that I ran with, and that now Eric, our executive director at Tilt, is scouting around, which is and trying to understand, frankly, which is coin of the realm. This idea of developing a physical world coin that has a reflection on the blockchains, and in fact, use the blockchain to register who gives the coin to, so it's like there's a rare number, like 11 coins or something in the world, and the giving of this coin to someone else is registered as an act of love on blockchain. And I have revisited this idea with several people, and people seem to think it's kind of brilliant, and it's a way you could start to create a community of intention and love. So in that respect, I feel like that's a way that you could buy love, but the what is you're not really buying it, you're experiencing it because of this
You're
bridge. It's almost like
investing,
it's just
investing.
you're investing in love. Yeah, see
That's
that
right.
because that feels more like it's a long-term now I feel loved, right? It's a long-term experience rather than, oh, I bought this thing at the store and then I ate it and now it's gone.
An example I gave was, we're developing this gazing app, and we're starting off with self-gazing,
Yeah,
but we're moving towards mutual gazing.
yeah.
And the really amazing thing that happens with this technology, if you want to know more about it, go to the Tilt website, loveandtime.org. And we have these two amazing apps, the Time Machine, and then we're working on the gazing app. But in this experience of gazing into somebody's eyes, not talking, not knowing if they're Republican or Democratic or Jewish or whatever, rich or poor, just looking into their eyes and having a moment of connection, what almost seems to happen almost universally, is this incredible sensation, this experience of unconditional love. And
Yeah.
if and what if we provided the opportunity to record that moment? Optional only. You can just keep it as a memory. You never know that person's name. This is an anonymous application, so
Well, they
you
would
have
have to say, like, "It's okay with me if you kept this recording," and
to
you would have
opt
to say,
in.
yeah, opt in.
Now you preserve that moment. Let's just say it's 60 seconds,
Yeah.
two people looking into each other's eyes. And I really relate to this because when I was in high school, I was waiting for a bus in Los Angeles, waiting for the RTD to Hollywood land. And the bus came up, another bus that I wasn't taking, and there was an elderly woman on the bus. She looked out the window at me. I looked out at her, and we had this really powerful connection. It wasn't a romantic connection. It was, nothing, there was nothing sexual or romantic about it. It was just, wow. I mean, we looked into each other's eyes, and I can remember it today, like, and this was like a half century ago. Um, but I remember the exact moment. I remember the bus stop. I remember the bus pulling up, the RTD bus windows, everything. It's so crystal clear. And that moment to me is one of the moments of magic, places of rescue in my life. If I look back and think of these special moments, if I could somehow preserve those and honor them, I would say, how much is that worth to me? Would I plunk down $100 bill and put it into let's say, a long-term investment fund to end hunger, uh, just to preserve that memory? And maybe I provide a narrative about it, or there's a recording about it. But I just say, okay, that is currency for me.
Yep.
And
That is
I'm willing to preserve that like an NFT,
yeah,
non-fungible token,
yeah,
whatever you want to call it. I don't think the technology is important as the concept, which is we can create value, we can create currency built on love. And that's a systemic change in our thinking in
yeah.
humanity. I don't think it's all that new.
Well,
There's
and a
been
donor like, a donor could come like, "This isn't all that new." It's just we're rediscovering it, right? A donor, people rediscover again and again as needed, um, the truth. But a donor could come and say, "I wanna buy, 1,000 of these gazing, experiences," which we could even turn into abstract art or something if people are afraid of seeing their own eyes, right? Because you can identify people sometimes by their eyes. Um, but I want to purchase 1,000 of them, and I want to explicitly support people who are Palestinian, gazing into the eyes of people who are Israeli. And because that is the change I'm hoping to make in the world, right? And then they say, okay, great. So then the software can explicitly solicit in those areas and match people up accordingly. So I think that this is sort of a modern, I mean, it is a little bit like 1973 speaking to 2033 in the sense of like, this is the way of reminding people of love in the future when we're in a state of grief, when we're in a state of fear, when we're in a state of despair. It's a way of someone who is not in that state and who is connected with love in that moment and who has hope saying, wait a minute, I want to help create that elsewhere. I think I love that. Wait, we have another question. Oh, it says, this is from our executive director. No other questions. Feel free to riff as long as you like.
Okay.
Please plug the Love and Time website at the end. We'll plug it right now, loveandtime.org. And we're
Yes,
gonna,
and we have two technologies which I think are reflect structural love. We have this time machine application, which I think allows, us to think outside of our box, whatever that might be, the construct of where we think we're at in time and love. And then the gazing app. And I think these technologies of love this is structural love. We need to invest and infest, the world of technology with unconditional love. And I think it's clear that even though there's clearly a dark side to social media and these technologies, there's also a bright side. And we haven't even touched on physics. As you know, there's some really interesting things going on in the world of physics. And there's so many different fields that I think could converge. And I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours, on the science side. But even look at the Voyager right now, this one object that's now in interstellar space.
oh my
It's
God, when I
carrying
was a kid back in 1973, I remember hearing hearing about that and crying when I heard the recording of what was on there, all the different a lot of
children.
different language of the world saying hello, and children and beautiful music and rock and roll and representations of who we are. It makes me want to cry now because it's like this is um this is who we're meant to be. Like, we don't have to believe that for the rest of humanity's life we have to have war and we have to have hunger and we have to have inequity. That's a belief that people hold when they're afraid to hope. And I understand that fear because it comes from trauma, it comes from unhealed wounds about I hoped a million times and I was let down. Right? I get it. Like, not that that hasn't happened to me. That has happened to me back in 1973, in fact. But but and unconditional love can come and connect sort of as grace. I mean, like almost in a way that you don't even um, know how it happened. And then it just appears. It's like walking out into the sun and you're like, I didn't know there was a sun in the sky. And it feels amazing. So yes, I think that that is what will eventually like help us let go of this idea that we have to perpetuate fear um, and grief and not look deeper into how those things can be healed, which is the tools of love. I do want to say that social media is kind of a disaster. And when I say kind of, I mean really. I mean, really, the addiction component of that is a disaster for humans, and people are figuring that out, and things are changing about that. But we design our technology on purpose to not be addictive. Um, so we put things in there like it's just not you do this one thing and then you leave, or there's none of this like being judged by your peers or likes or these kinds of things. You can share things, but that's it. There's no competition for likes, so people don't become like farmers is the term that I like to use. um they become love farmers, which is
Exactly.
so much better.
Yeah.
So I just like to say, and you can go to timemachine.love, and try out Time Machine, although we are going to have this is our beta launch. We're going to have a much bigger launch later at the end of June and in July. But we are creating communities. We're making the both the legal structure and the technical structure allow for creating communities of care that use Time Machines. So working with indigenous communities in the United States, working with
Incarcerated.
incarcerated people who are struggling with addiction. And so that when these communities go onto their time machine, not the global one, which is Time Machine, not love, but their own, then they know that the other people that are on there are in their same shoes. so that that community can build. So if you're interested, by the way, you have a community you'd like to bring Time Machine to, talk to Eric Smith, our executive director, talk to me, talk to Wolfram, hit us up on LinkedIn, and we will get you to the right place so that you can form a partnership and we can create something really appropriate for your community.
It's just another great example of showing that we can, with all of the negative things that we can see in the world around technology and so many of the systems of hate, we can counter those. We have the equal opportunity and skills to create the systems that can generate unconditional love and counter some of these systemic problems that are affecting all of us. The trauma that we experience in the world is systemic. That our systems are dysfunctional, and we have to fix them. And we need to bring the love back into the corp. I think after,
and weave it through
yeah,
time. Where's my
yes,
and weave it through time, right? All the way
yes.
through time. Um, if it just comes now, it's not enough. It needs to be woven thoughtfully into our understanding of the past and our projections forward into the future.
What I love, I've heard recently, the idea of the 300-year plan. Throughout my career, I've heard multiple plans: the 10-year plan to end hunger, the 10-year plan to end homelessness. None of them have, of course, succeeded, because we have to start to think multi-generationally, and that requires some unconditional love, because you're saying, I'm going to think about people 300 years from now. I'm not going to benefit from that. At least I think I will, but I'm saying it's maybe hard to think about how you might benefit from that.
Yeah,
And this idea of the long body, that you are actually you're not separate from this stream, this wonderful stream of humanity and where it's going. We have to imagine through, structural ways, systemic ways, through love, through time, how the future can be better. And doing that, what the interesting thing in the film Arrival is, by seeing the future, the beautiful future, what happens? The present changes.
that's right.
Such
That's why it
wonderful
has to be woven
metaphors.
through time. That's right. Arrival with Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner. Go see it immediately. It's just like our theme movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just I want to say the name of your book again, Radiate Perpetual Love. What a beautiful it's like a command and a blessing.
Is I look at it, when I read it, I think, who wrote this? Because it really did, I don't want to make it sound I don't know, ethereal, but I just allowed that information to flow through me. I just immersed myself in there's so many wonderful um, um, people who have spoken about unconditional love over the centuries. And once you just sort of cook yourself into that, you immerse yourself in it, it just the system, the systemic, the structural love just bubbles right out.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm really delighted that I'm going to be able to share that, because what I'm hoping for is not to be a guru of love and preach love and wave my love beads around. But I really want to have more deep, meaningful conversations with people in many different fields who, asked the question earlier, what about love in the workplace, unconditional love in the workplace? Well, I want to talk about unconditional love in physics.
Yeah.
I don't want unconditional love to just live in this ethereal space. I think that science is just beginning to understand what this actually is. And
Yes.
so a wonderful future ahead of us. And we haven't even talked about like the neuroscience of unconditional love. So I feel
Well,
like we have another.
it's about student
Yeah,
of humanity. We haven't talked about loving AI projects. So like there are efforts to bring unconditional love to technology and into science, and even we haven't even talked about the work I've done on the science. And so anyway, we'll have another conversation.
I hope so.
But this has been amazing. I love you, Wolfram. I love our connection. I love this. So thank you.
Thank you. I love you too. And I love being part of Tilt and this work that connects us to so many amazing people that have been part of Tilt. And I think the best is yet to come in this work. So thank you. Bye-bye.